What if the people you've sacrificed everything for, the ones you raised, nurtured, and loved through sleepless nights and endless days, suddenly turned their backs on you? Imagine standing in the quiet of your own home, the echoes of their childhood laughter long faded, only to feel the sting of their dismissive words or the weight of their indifference. There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children shift, a subtle but seismic change that creeps in like a shadow. You spend decades guiding them, pouring your heart into their dreams, setting aside your own needs to lift them up. But then one day, something breaks. Maybe they roll their eyes at your advice, brush off your opinions as outdated, or speak to you in tones that cut deeper than silence. Worse still, they might make you feel like a burden, an afterthought in the lives you helped build. And it hurts. The ache is raw, a quiet wound that throbs with every ignored call or curt reply. If your children have started treating you with less respect than you deserve, you're not alone, and you don't have to stay stuck in that pain. You might feel a storm brewing inside you, frustration, even anger, tempting you to shout, to list every sacrifice, every late night, every tear you shed for them. You might want to grab them by the shoulders and demand they remember who you are and what you've done. But here's a hard truth, one that stings as much as it liberates. Anger won't mend this rift. Yelling won't bring back their respect. In fact, it often widens the gap, leaving you more isolated than before. There's a better way, a quieter, stronger path to reclaim your place in their eyes. Not through battles or bitterness, but through subtle, powerful shifts in how you carry yourself. Today, I'm going to share 6 actions you can take when your children don't respect you. These aren't quick fixes or empty promises. They're deep, intentional changes that can transform how they see you. From a figure they take for granted to one they admire and honor. Some of these might catch you off guard, might even feel uncomfortable at first, but if you stay with me until the end, you'll uncover a way to stand tall again, respected and valued, not because you forced it, but because you earned it. Let's dive in. Action 1. Stop chasing their approval picture. You're bending over backward, rearranging your day to fit their schedule, biting your tongue when you want to speak, saying yes when every fiber of you screams no. You do it all hoping they'll notice, hoping they'll toss you a crumb of appreciation. But instead, the more you give, the less they seem to care. It's a trap too many parents fall into as they age, chasing their children's approval like it's the key to their worth. Maybe you've felt it too, that sinking realization that your efforts don't spark gratitude, only expectation. Here's the painful, unshakable truth. The harder you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Respect isn't a reward for self-sacrifice. It's a reflection of self-respect. When you're always yielding, always smoothing things over, always putting their needs above your own, you're not teaching them to value you. You're showing them your feelings don't matter. I once knew a woman named Margaret, a firecracker in her youth, with a laugh that could light up a room and a spine of steel. She'd raised 3 kids on her own after her husband walked out, working double shifts at a diner to keep food on the table. But as she grew older, something shifted. Her kids, now adults with lives of their own, started calling the shots. She'd drop everything to babysit their kids, even when her back ached and her energy waned. She'd keep her opinions locked away, even when they snapped at her over trivial things. "I just want to keep the family together," she confessed to me, one afternoon over tea, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and exhaustion. But the more she gave, the less they saw her. They'd bark orders, ignore her calls, treat her like a convenience instead of a cornerstone. Margaret thought she was holding the piece together with her silence, but she was losing herself and their respect piece by piece. The first step to turning this around isn't loud or confrontational, it's about you. Stop chasing. Set boundaries that protect your dignity. Say no when you mean it. Voice your thoughts even if they bristle. It's not about picking a fight, it's about showing them you're not a doormat. Imagine Margaret pausing mid-sentence when her daughter cut her off, looking her in the eye and saying, "I'll finish my thought, then I'd love to hear yours." Small, firm, unshakable. The moment you start honoring yourself, they'll start seeing you anew. It won't happen overnight. Habits die hard, but over time, that flicker of respect will grow, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped begging for it. Action 2. Don't argue. Lead by example. Your daughter brushes off your advice about her spending habits with a scoff. Your son talks over you at the dinner table, his voice drowning yours out. Your first instinct might be to push back, to raise your voice, to remind them of the years you spent teaching them right from wrong, to insist they listen. It feels justified, doesn't it? You've earned that respect, and they're trampling it. But let me save you a decade of heartache. Arguing doesn't win respect. It's like shouting into a void. The louder you get, the less they hear. Think back to a time someone tried to force you to see their side through a fight. Did it work? Or did it just make you dig in deeper? Respect isn't a prize you claim in a shouting match. It's a quiet strength you embody. Take Frank, a retired schoolteacher I once knew. In his classroom, he'd commanded attention with a steady voice and a sharp mind, guiding rowdy kids into thoughtful adults. But at home, his grown children treated him like background noise. They'd dismiss his stories about the past, roll their eyes at his suggestions, even chuckle when he tried to correct their facts. At first, Frank fought back. "I didn't raise you to talk to me like that," he'd snap, his face flushed with frustration. But the arguments only fueled the fire. His kids would double down, and he'd end up feeling smaller than before. Then one evening, something clicked. Instead of sparring with his son over a political rant, Frank leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and listened. Not passively, but with purpose. Nodding, asking a calm question, letting the boy exhaust his steam. When he spoke, it was brief, steady, wise. "I've seen a few things in my time. You might find this worth considering." No heat, no desperation, just presence. Slowly, Frank's kids started to shift. They noticed he didn't need to prove himself, didn't crumble under their jabs. He carried himself like a man who knew his worth. Not loud, not fragile, but solid. If your children dismiss you, don't meet their disrespect with a fight. Meet it with dignity. Listen when they speak, but don't shrink. Speak with quiet confidence, not to win, but to show you're still here, still steady. Keep your head high, even when they test you. They'll feel that strength. It's magnetic, and in time, they'll mirror it back. Respect grows in the space where you refuse to lower yourself, where you lead not with words, but with who you are. Action 3. Withdraw your emotional dependence. What if the love you've poured into your children, the endless well of care and devotion, becomes the very thing that pushes them away? It's a bitter pill to swallow, but as you age, one of the toughest lessons is this: you can't lean on your kids to fill the spaces in your heart. You might adore them beyond measure, might crave their affection and respect as proof that all those years meant something. But the moment they sense you need them to feel whole, the balance tips. They don't draw closer, they pull back. People, even your own flesh and blood, respect those who stand on their own, not those who cling. When you tether your happiness to their calls, their visits, their approval, it doesn't spark gratitude, it breeds pressure. And instead of cherishing you, they might resent the weight of your longing. I once knew a woman named Helen, a gentle soul with a smile that could melt frost. She'd raised 2 daughters single-handedly after her husband died young, stitching their lives together with grit and grace. She was the mom who baked cookies for school plays, who stayed up late sewing costumes, who cheered loudest at every milestone. But as her girls grew into busy women with careers and families, Helen's world shrank. She'd sit by the phone, its silence a quiet accusation, waiting for them to remember her. When they didn't call, she'd dial them, once, twice, too many times, her voice soft but pleading. "I miss you. When can you come by?" She'd recount old memories, hoping to reel them back to the days when she was their everything. But instead of warmth, she got clipped. Replies, excuses, sighs of impatience. "Mum, I'm swamped," they'd say, and Helen would nod, swallowing the hurt. She didn't see it then, but her neediness was a wall between them. Her daughters felt obligated, not inspired, to reach out. Then, one crisp autumn day, Helen decided enough was enough. She was tired of waiting, tired of feeling like a shadow in their lives. She dusted off an old easel she'd tucked away decades ago and started painting. Bold strokes of color that spilled her soul onto canvas. She joined a gardening club, her hands sinking into cool earth as she coaxed flowers to bloom. She laughed with new friends over coffee, her days full of her own making. The phone still sat quiet some days, but it didn't crush her anymore. She wasn't waiting. And then something shifted. Her daughters started calling, not out of guilt, but curiosity. "What's this about a painting class, Mom?" they'd ask, intrigued by the spark in her voice. They'd drop by unannounced, marveling at the woman who'd built a life that didn't orbit them. Helen hadn't demanded their respect. She'd claimed her own joy, and they couldn't help but admire her for it. If your children's distance stings, ask yourself, are you leaning too hard? Loosen the grip. Find your own light, hobbies, passions, people who lift you up. It's not about cutting them off. It's about standing tall without them holding you up. The less you need their love to feel complete, the more freely they'll offer it. And the respect will follow, not as a duty, but as a gift. Action 4. Set boundaries and enforce them. Imagine your son snapping at you mid-sentence, his tone sharp enough to slice through years of care. Or your daughter brushing off your concerns with a wave, as if your voice is just static. You let it slide, once, twice, a dozen times, because you hate conflict, because you tell yourself it's not worth the fuss. But every time you stay silent, you're handing them permission to do it again. Children don't lose respect because they're cruel. They lose it because we let them. If you don't draw a line, calmly, firmly, unapologetically, they'll keep crossing it, not out of malice, but habit. Boundaries aren't walls to keep them out. They're markers of your worth, a quiet declaration that you matter too. Robert was a man who'd spent his life commanding respect. A retired businessman, he'd built a small empire with a handshake and a steel-eyed resolve, leading teams through storms with a steady hand. But at home, His adult children chipped away at that authority. His son would cut him off mid-story, barking about how things are different now. His daughter would critique his every choice, his diet, his clothes, his quiet evenings alone, like he was a project to fix. At first, Robert shrugged it off. "They're just busy," he'd mutter, nursing a glass of bourbon on his porch. The sunset painting the sky, he barely noticed. But the dismissals piled up, each one a pebble on his chest, until he couldn't ignore the weight. He realized his silence wasn't peace, it was surrender. So, one Sunday dinner, Robert rewrote the script. When his son interrupted him, he didn't flinch or yell. He set down his fork, met the boy's eyes, and said, "I'm speaking. You'll get your turn when I'm done." His voice was low, steady, a riverbed unshaken by the current. When his daughter scoffed at his opinion on a news story, he didn't shrink. "You don't have to like what I think," he told her, "but you will respect that I think it." And when they tested him, pushing, prodding, he stood firm. "If we can't talk with respect," he said once, rising from the table, "I'll see you another time." No drama, no threats, just clarity. At first they balked, grumbled, accused him of overreacting. But Robert didn't budge. He loved them fiercely, but he loved himself too. Over weeks, then months, they adjusted. They listened, they softened, they saw a man who wouldn't be diminished, and they respected him for it. If your children treat you like your time, your voice, your feelings don't count, it's time to ask, what am I allowing? Set your boundaries, not with anger, but with resolve. Enforce them, not with ultimatums, but consistency. A simple, "I won't be spoken to that way," or "I'm happy to help when it's appreciated," can shift the tide. They might resist at first. Change rattles the comfortable, but they'll come around. Respect grows where you plant it, and it thrives where you protect it. Action 5. Stop giving without appreciation. Picture yourself dropping everything, your plans, your rest, your quiet moments, to rush to your child's aid. Maybe it's a last-minute favor, a loan to tide them over, or hours spent fixing something they broke. You give it freely, your heart wide open, expecting nothing more than a thanks to warm the effort. But instead, you get a shrug, a grunt, or worse. Complaints that it wasn't enough. It's a gut punch, isn't it? The sting of pouring yourself out only to watch it vanish into a void of entitlement. As parents, we're wired to give our time, our energy, our love. But when that generosity goes unnoticed, unvalued, it doesn't build bridges, it erodes them. The more you give to those who don't appreciate it, the less they see your worth. Kindness stops being a gift and becomes a debt they expect you to pay. George was a man who lived to give. A widower with a gruff voice and a soft heart, he'd raised 3 kids through lean years, fixing cars in his garage to keep the lights on. Even after they'd grown and moved out, he was their rock, writing checks when rent was tight, driving across town to help with a flooded basement, rearranging his weekends to babysit grandkids. He never asked for much in return, just a nod of gratitude, a sign they saw his effort. But over time, that faded. His youngest would take the money and mutter, "You're late with it this time." His eldest would call with a new crisis, never asking how he was. And when George's own car broke down one winter, his kids were too busy to lend a hand. He'd sit in his worn armchair, staring at the snow piling up outside, wondering where he'd gone wrong. "I thought giving would keep us close," he told me once, his voice rough with hurt. But all it did was teach them to take him for granted. Then George hit a breaking point. One spring day, his middle child called, demanding he drop everything to fix her leaking sink. He paused, the phone heavy in his hand, and said, "I can't today. I've got my own plans." She sputtered, indignant, but he held firm. From then on, he shifted. He stopped offering help before it was asked, stopped saying yes when he meant no. He still loved them, would have moved mountains if they'd needed it. But he tied his generosity to respect. "I'll help when I can," he'd say, "but I'd like a thank you too." At first, they bristled, unused to the change, but slowly they adjusted. His youngest started texting, "Appreciate it, Dad," after a favor. His eldest called just to chat, not to ask. George's giving became a choice, not a reflex, and because it wasn't guaranteed, they started valuing it, valuing him. If your children take your kindness for granted, step back. Ask yourself, am I giving more than they're willing to see? Scale it down, not out of spite, but self-worth. Offer your time and help when it's earned, when it's met with a flicker of appreciation. They might pout or push, but they'll learn. Your generosity is a treasure, not a tap they can turn on at will. And when they see its limits, they'll start to cherish it, and you again. Action 6. Build a life outside of them. What if your children look at you and see not a person, but a role, a parent whose whole world spins around them? It's natural to make them your sun and stars when they're young, to orbit their needs, their joys, their futures. But as they grow and you age, that center can hollow out. If your days are spent waiting for their calls, living through their stories, measuring your worth by their attention, they'll feel it. They might not say it, but they'll sense you're adrift without them. And that doesn't inspire respect. It breeds pity, or worse, suffocation. People admire those who stand on their own feet, who carve out purpose beyond the family tree. When your life is full, vibrant with your own pursuits, they'll see you not as a shadow of their past, but as a force in your own right. Eleanor was a woman who'd given everything to her family. In her late 70s, a widow with silver hair and a quiet strength, she'd spent decades as the glue holding everyone together. After her husband passed, she turned that devotion to her 2 sons, calling them daily, offering advice they didn't want, hovering like a moth around their busy lives. She'd sit in her tidy living room, surrounded by framed photos of their childhood, waiting for them to fill the silence he'd left behind. But the more she clung, the further they drifted. Visits dwindled to holidays. Calls shrank to quick check-ins. "They don't need me anymore," she'd whisper to herself, the loneliness settling like dust. Until one day, staring at a faded picture of her younger self, laughing free, she decided to stop waiting. Eleanor joined a book club, her fingers tracing the pages of novels she'd never had time for. She signed up for a bus tour with a group of chatty retirees, marveling at mountains and coastlines she'd only seen in dreams. She volunteered at a local shelter, her hands busy with tasks that mattered. Her sons noticed the shift, her voice brighter, her stories her own. "You're going where, Mom?" they'd ask, half amazed, half curious. They started calling more, not out of duty, but intrigue. They'd drop by to hear about her latest adventure, their eyes wide with something new. Admiration. Eleanor hadn't demanded their respect. She'd built a life that commanded it. Her happiness didn't hinge on them anymore, and that freedom drew them closer than her neediness ever had. If your children don't respect you, look at your world. Is it a shrine to them, or a canvas of your own? Fill it. Join a class. Chase a passion. Find your people. It's not about abandoning them. It's about showing them you're more than their parent. You're a person, alive and thriving. When they see you light up for yourself, they'll start to see you differently. Respect doesn't come from clinging to their orbit. It blooms when you step into your own. Final thoughts. Respect isn't a switch you can flip or a prize you can demand from your children. It's a garden you cultivate through how you live. If they've started treating you with less care, less regard, less honor, don't waste your breath on fury. Shift the soil instead. Stop chasing their approval, because the less you seek it, the more they'll offer. Lead with dignity, not arguments, because your presence speaks louder than your pleas. Free yourself from needing them to feel whole, because independence earns awe. Set boundaries, because they'll only value what you defend. Give with purpose, not habit, because unappreciated kindness loses its shine. And build a life that's yours, because people respect those who don't just exist. They thrive. Do this, and something remarkable will unfold. Your children will see you anew, not as a relic of their past, but as a pillar of strength in their present. The respect will return, not forced, but forged by who you've become. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I'd love to hear your voice. Drop a comment below with one thing that struck you, one step you'll take to reclaim your place. Your thoughts fuel this journey, and reading them lights me up. If this resonated, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Your support keeps this fire burning, bringing more stories to inspire and uplift. Until next time, keep standing tall. You've got this.